we'll start off. So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Trespect India, I would like to welcome you to today's webinar on the changing trends in home buying during COVID-19 times. Thank you for taking time out on a Saturday morning to take us to attend this webinar. Trespect is a culmination of two words. It is trust and respect, and that forms the very basis of the reason for the existence of the organization Trespect. Our objective is to ensure that we win the trust of customers in whatever we do, and hence also bring in respect for the real estate industry. To take us through this webinar, we have with us two speakers. To introduce the speakers, the first speaker is Mr. Sunil Mishra. Mr. Sunil Mishra is the Managing Director and CEO of Respect India Private Limited, a tech-enabled pan-India real estate advisory business, enabling home buyers to make the right choice. Over the last 25 years, Sunil has accumulated a unique set of skills, from being a private equity financial analyst at Worldtel to being a management consultant at KPMG to building a world-class business of huge size at Airtel, uh, to impeccable processes at Karvi Private Wealth as their CEO, and finally building the consumer internet real estate business across PropTiger Housing Group as their chief business officer, and now at Respect. Sunil has earned his MBA from IIM Bangalore and has a bachelor's degree in electronics engineering from VJTI in Mumbai. Sunil is a self-confessed social media freak and is an avid tweeter and blogger on topics of leadership, strategy, current affairs, and urban living, apart from real estate, of course. He's also the author of the book Return of the Hypotenuse, which is poetry in math and science, which was published in March 2015. So that's Sunil for you. The second speaker we have with us is Mr. Amit Sinha. Amit is the Chief Operating Officer at Respect India. Here he plays a varied role, from managing partner relations, sales, risk management, business operations, financial planning and analysis. Amit has over 2 decades of experience in building and leading sales and distribution functions in companies across diverse industries with significant operating scale and complexities. Prior to Trespect, Amit has worked with PropTiger.com as their business head for their transactions business unit for almost 3 years. Amit was also part of SBI Cards prior to PropTiger, where for close to 11 years, he was the senior vice president and business head for co-branded cards. Amit has also worked for ICICI Bank, NIIT, and MyIris.com in his earlier assignments. Amit is an MBA graduate from IISW and BM from Calcutta University, and a BSc Physics from Science College from Patna University. He's also an avid runner and participates regularly in multiple marathons. He's also a voracious reader and traveler, and likes to meet and engage with new people. So that is Amit for you. While I hand over the presentation to the speakers to take us through the webinar, just one small point, which is that while most of you have also given us your questions already while registering, which you would like to ask the speakers, which we will ask them at the end of the webinar. However, during the presentation, in case you may have any more questions, feel free to WhatsApp me on the number 9967644928. The number is also appearing on your screen under the chat window. 9967644928. With this brief introduction, I would like to request Sunil and Amit to take us through this webinar.
Yeah. Thanks, Varun. So sort of slightly embarrassing to see yourself on a slide. So sort of apologies for that. And Varun, thanks for the kind introduction for me and Amit. Welcome everyone again, our friends from Bangalore and other cities as well, on a quick sort of short webinar which we have put together to make sense of what's happening right now, and possibly to take a few steps back and look at the bigger picture on how bad is it, etc. So there are 5 sections. I'll start off with some events in the last 10 to 15 years that have sort of disrupted real estate, and just see how does COVID stack up against that. The second section, I'll quickly take you guys through pros and cons of buying a house versus renting. Then I'll pass it on to Amit to take you to the meat of today's sort of discussion on how purchasing has changed in COVID times and what's going to happen beyond. And then towards the end, I'll again, and he'll talk about the future trends in real estate itself. And towards the end, I'll just sort of have a small cameo of a section on prices and how bad is the COVID really? Because a lot of people are writing a lot of stuff and across the world, and we are exposed to lots of forwards in WhatsApp. So we'll just try to help you make sense of what's happening. And there's 1 or 2 slides in each section, so don't worry. It's just about 9 to 10 slides on a Saturday morning. We won't really bother you with too much data. So I'll jump into the first section, which is disruptive events. And before that, a quick introduction to the team. Amit and myself, Varun has elaborated. Vikrant is the business head for Bangalore, and he leads the whole business in Bangalore and in South as well, as we keep on building it up. He's there with us on the webinar. Thanks, Vikrant. Arun, who started this call off, is the national head for marketing. Really helped us put together and make us look more intelligent. I'll just jump into the disruptive events, and I'll play through the sort of content on these slides. Like when we pushed ourselves as a team to think of what were the other disruptive events that happened in the last 10 to 15 years, we could think of 3 events. One was the 2008 global financial crisis. The other was the November 8, 2016 demonetization. And the third was the May to July 2017 RERA Act, which and each of them brought in different types of disruption into the real estate. So we're just learning from the history so that we don't make similar mistakes of the past now. So 2008 global financial crisis was a real global crisis, similar to that what we are going through with COVID in terms of economy. So that was a financial crisis, this is a health crisis, followed by an economic crisis. 2008, what had happened, if you remember, 2003 to 2008, for people who are about 35 years, would remember as a golden period for Indian economy, for real estate as well. The home prices had tripled in most of the market 3 times, which means a 200% increase over 5-6 years, which is almost a 30% compound and annual growth rate year on year, 30%, which was a pretty sort of phenomenal bull run. And post that, the 2008 global financial crisis had hit. What happened? Three major things happened there. There were these speculators who had gotten the market, who were coming in and exiting in 3 to 6 months as the prices were increasing. So they exited the market. A huge bunch of investors started walking off from the market at that time. Real estate developers started finding it tougher to raise funding. Banks had stopped raising funding by an RBI diktat, and the cost of funding went up for the real estate guys as they started borrowing more from NBFCs and private equity funds. The third trend which happened was that there was a huge run of luxury segments across India, primarily in NCR and Bombay, but I'm sure it had its fair share in Bangalore as well. And that sort of luxury segment started getting replaced with an affordable segment trend from 2008 onwards. So that's what happened in 2008. On November 8, 2016, when Prime Minister Modi came on TV for the first time and sort of with a huge diktat, and made 86% of our cash invalid that night. There was a huge sort of a rumor floated in the market in the next 1 week that home prices are going to fall by 30%. After 1 or 2 months of slowed down sales because of that, because people started waiting for the prices to fall, it was concluded or discovered that the price never fell. So it was a price fall hoax, as we call it. But there was a slowdown in sales because normal people like you and me started waiting for the prices to fall, which never came in. There was some cash involved in resale deals and in land sales deals, so that got impacted. But new homes were already cleaned. Most of the developers by that time were taking all 100% payments in white, so it did not impact the new home market too much. Sales got affected in 2017, which is the second point in demonetization, as I mentioned. genuine home buyers were still able to get attractive deals. And one trend started, which is going on today as well, that larger developers across India started getting with better corporate governance, started aggregating market share. So while it was bigger corporate groups like Godrej, Mahindra, Tata, and now Birla, who started entering into this, there are the older, bigger developers as well, which is the Hiranandani, Rahejas, DLFs of Mumbai and North, and Brigade, Purvankara, Prestige, Shobha, Embassy of the South, which started gaining market share. So these are trends which happened in November 8, 2016. Just 6 months later, while the industry was recovering from that, RERA came in. RERA was a supply side shock, which meant that developers stopped launching projects for some time and started cleaning up their inventories from the past, because they would come under the RERA scheme. So they wanted to clean up all the past sort of inventory. The good thing about RERA was that RERA was formed as a regulatory body to protect the home buyers. So like IRDA did for insurance, TRAI did for telecoms, and SEBI did for stockbroking. This is a watchdog body to protect our interests. And this had become necessary because the 7-8 years before that, a lot of developers across the country had taken many consumers for a ride. So developers were almost developers are penalized now for not meeting promises of quality in time. It was a big relief to home buyers. And this further started accelerated the consolidation of big brands. The bigger developers became better and bigger because they were anyways fulfilling their promises to customers already, while the smaller developers, the single building developers, started getting more and more irrelevant as RERA sort of hit them hard. So these are the three sort of almost milestones in the history of residential real estate in the last 10-15 years. And COVID is the fourth one, which we'll cover today. Just giving you a bit of data, don't worry too much. This is a graph which shows the number of homes purchased by home buyers like us every year for the last 7 years. And these there's a total of the home sales in the top 8 to 10 cities of India. Bangalore being, of course, almost at the top there after Mumbai. So you can clearly see that the graph is in two parts. It starts from 2013 on the left side, where you can see the number 3.18 lakhs, and it goes to 2019 on the right side, which is the full calendar year of 2019, where it's 2.6 lakhs. The graph you can see is easily made of two parts. One is the part on the right, which is which has an average of almost 2.5 lakh homes. If you see 2016 to 2019, so there are 2.5 lakh homes sold on average in the last 4 years. This is despite demonetization, despite RERA. So this is one point we wanted to bring out. The bars on the left were an average of about 3.25 lakhs. So there's a difference of 75,000 to 1 lakh. And these were the investors who were buying homes at that time, as a second home, third home, fourth home for investment. And these people sort of have left the market. So it proves that there is still a very solid demand of about 2.5 lakh homes every year from end users who are serious buyers and who want to buy homes. Because as the last point says, home is a basic shelter requirement. The number of homes sold even in testing times will always be more than 2 lakhs. So that is because people need homes, right? And this has been proven more so in these COVID times. We just wanted to give you a perspective of the numbers of homes sold because when you come to 2020 and we start predicting for 2020, remember these numbers that we have been selling 2.5 lakh homes in the top 7 to 8 cities of India. My last section before I hand it over to Amit to take you through the main part of home buying during COVID times is pros and cons of buying and renting. There's again too many words here, so don't worry. I'll guide you to two or three bullet points here. The left side is the advantages of buying, and the right side is the advantage of renting. So advantages of buying are, some of them are pretty commonsensical, that it provides security of owning an asset. It gives you price appreciation, which I remember I told you 2003 to 2008, there was a 200% price appreciation. This price appreciation has not happened in 2016 to 2020. So there are two ways to look at it, as an opportunity or as a trend. And we'll talk about that more once we come to prices. If you buy your own home, there is no restrictions imposed by landlord. You can drive the nail on the wall, whichever wall you want to, and hang whichever painting you want to. You don't have to change homes every 11 to 22 months. And you have tax benefits on housing loan as well. So these are advantages of buying, which is sort of pretty commonsensical. There are advantages of renting for some people who want to sort of have a flexible lifestyle and keep on changing homes every year. Some people may like that. Uh, in years when there is little capital appreciation, or when that is 2016 to 2020, last 4 years, we would have thought that it may have been better to pay 2 to 3% of the apartment value as rent and invest the money in equities or mutual funds, right? And which would give you 10 to 12%, and hence you would sort of gain from the arbitrage, which is a 10% minus 3%, 7% arbitrage. However, now with the equity market fallen and it's gone to about 2015, 2016 levels, people who would have adopted that strategy don't even have a home, nor do they have the appreciation from equities. So it is not so easy sort of making money across asset classes. And hence, we are great proponents of viewing home as a end-use product, which is used for sort of for you and your family. And that's what the last 2 points on the slide are, that home is what gives you shelter in the most distant times. In COVID, you have heard two phrases: stay from home, work from home, or stay at home, work from home. Both have home as in common, right? And this, the real estate industry has not written that. This is what the world is living through. And I mentioned the last point about investment returns, is that if you had actually invested in mutual funds in 2015-16 and thought that you will make money while not buying a home and staying on rent, then you are not really better off today. So whenever is the first opportunity, and you have been out of college for 3 to 10 years, I think it's the time to buy a house and make a secure sort of a quasi-emotional investment into this asset class. So with that, I'll hand over to Amit to take you through the main part of the discussion, which is home buying in COVID times.
Thank you, Sunil. And I extend my warm welcome to all the participants who have come on this webinar. Before I move on to the nuances of real estate, I just want us to take a pause and reflect back on some of the profound changes in our own behavior, which has happened in the last 20 years. So we have put up some examples, and there are many more like this. But let's go through some of them, and and you will find it very, very interesting that while today most of us would be doing transactions, on the stock market or purchasing and selling mutual funds just at the click of a button on our app, on our phone, or through our laptop. Many of us would also have access to the trading terminals, which many of such players like ICICI Securities or HDFC Securities provide to, as part of the subscription. But can you imagine that 20 years ago, when if somebody had to make any transaction or purchase or sell any stock, you couldn't have done that. That was not possible. And some of us will remember that 20 years ago, the only way through which it could have happened was to keep aside a margin money with a broker, and who would do trading on your behalf. So let's say if you keep 20,000 at the broker, you can do 20 times, so 20 times or 20,000, you can trade till that amount, and you will have to place request to that broker, and who would do transactions on your behalf. Can you imagine that in the last 20 years, what was done through such a circuitous way of doing stock trading is now is being done at just by our fingertips. 15 years ago, I have spent a lot of my time, in credit card industry, and trust me, 15 years ago, when we were to give our cards online for any kind of online transaction, we were really scared about this, and you will all realize and imagine, remember that it was not easy for us to part with our credit card numbers on any of the website. We were really scared of phishing, and all that stuff which used to come, but just imagine at this point in time, do we even remember that how many payment gateways do we use, how many payment apps we have, and we load currency onto these payment gateways through our credit card, through our debit card, and our credit card numbers are available in so many checkouts across so many apps which we use seamlessly. So so this, to my mind, is one of the big changes. It has come in a way of us taking care of our own money. 10 years ago, the only way to buy clothes was to queue up, stack up in front of a trial room, fit it out, and finally purchase. But can we even imagine? Could we have even imagine 10 years ago that one day we would not even go to such retailers and we would buy clothes online at Myntra, Jabong, Amazon, Flipkart, without even trying these things. So I think these, and there are many such examples, but just to give a highlight on some of the profound changes in the consumer behavior and the way we have, it's not about someone else. We are talking about ourselves. People who are on this webinar and people in this country. This is how we have changed in the last 20 years, and this is the normal process through which we imbibe and embrace changes. We believe that this is going to be new normal for real estate, and now digital selling is going to get embraced in a big way in real estate as well, especially for launch and under construction project, which one will also remember and understand that for launch and under construction you practically have nothing else to see at a site, other than the physical satisfaction of going and visiting a site. You absolutely see nothing because nothing is there, and most of the information is already available on things which could get transposed on digitally, and digital could replace the physical way, and life could be normal. Let's take a pause and also reflect back on our own behavior and how we have behaved in the last more than 40 days now, especially during lockdown. Before lockdown, and pre-COVID-19 period, smartphone consumption per day was close to 3.4 hours. Now, by end of week 2, it has already scaled up to 3.8 hours. And this is only a study till end of week 2. I'm sure that by end of the entire lockdown period, when the new study will get published, the final consumption on smartphones will go beyond 4 hours. Now, very interesting to note that this is not, when normalcy is restored, this whatever current hours of consumption on the smartphone is, will not go back to the pre-COVID time. This is always a step-up behavior, in such things. So even after the normalcy is restored, we expect the consumption of smartphones to be higher than what it was earlier, because now we have got used to it in a big way. Graham Bell, who invented telephone, would have died again today when he would have looked at this data. But I have the pleasure of sharing this information with you, which Nielsen conducted on 1 lakh plus consumers across 15 to 44 years of age, on where are we using our phones, where are we using our smartphones, and where are we using our phones. Quite interestingly, phones which were actually built 120, 150 years ago for calling is now only being used for 10%. So 10% of the total time when the phone is being used is used for calling. The balance 90% is used for multiple other activities. And now a phone has become, a melting pot of a lot of stuff that we do otherwise. So chat and voice on internet is 19%. Social networking is 15%. Utility is 15%. Video streaming is 15%. Gaming is 9%. Browsing is 6%. And others 11%. So practically everything that we do in our waking moment is being done on the smartphone, right from the time when we wake up and right from the time we sleep. And I strongly encourage you to also check your screen time on whatever phone you will use, and you will clearly see that this is being talked about you and me. Some interesting patterns: 15 to 24 years population use gaming more, and females are using chat slightly more than males. But the big profound message which is coming out of this slide is that smartphones consumption have now not only gone up in a big way, but it has kind of also become an instrument through which many other activities also being done through the phone other than calling and texting. So when we reflect back on this, so what we have done at Respect, we have tried to create and merge all this stuff intelligently to make sure that we create a process and method through which we continue to help our consumers make intelligent choices, because we don't want our consumers to really get locked out in lockdown. And we have created processes, and I will share with you very quickly on what we have done to make sure that our consumers are ahead of everything, all kind of information. So Respect, as Varun was introducing us, I'd like to very clearly highlight that we do not believe in selling anything. We are not sellers of anything. We act as pure advisors, and we take pride in the fact that we advise on the current trend and what should a consumer do. So what we do is that our sales team, whom we don't even call sales team, we call them relationship team. The relationship manager connects with the customer and he understands the requirement of that customer. Instead of others who will try to force fit a product into a consumer's requirement, we don't do any such things, because we truly have to live to the brand adage that we have. Trust and respect are the core construct of our company. So our sales team, our relationship managers goes through this entire understanding of customer requirement process, which we called as KYC, which is know your customer. And this is a mandatory process through which that understanding is gauged by our relationship manager. After this, a video call is fixed up not only with the customer. We also encourage the customer to also encourage participation of his family, because home buying is a serious affair. It's a big ticket transaction, and we would strongly encourage the family to be part of this, because most of the consumption is most of the purchase is used for end consumption. So it's important to take the input from the family as well. After we do this video call, what we do that we have created a complete digital suite of all the products which is available in the market, which we think is worthy of consideration set of a consumer. So all the site tour, 3D view, layout, everything, any information which otherwise could have been made available physically is created, is stacked up on a virtual platform, which we take our consumers through. So the consumer will not miss anything, especially that they will not miss anything in the sense that they do not need to go to any site physically to take any such decision. So everything is being made available online, and we have created and crafted this, and this is one of the only companies in this trade who have taken this initiative to create such virtual suite of all such products. After this, we resolve our consumer's query, take on board the developer representative, and finalize the property, and that's how we move forward. We came up with a press release 2 weeks ago that during the first 21 days of the lockdown, thankfully at a group level, we sold 300 units, aggregating 252 crores of total sale value. I think when we'll come up with our next release, this amount would have got trebled, because we have seen amazing participation from consumers. And we've also seen that such kind of a crisis is also a great time to get the right prices and get great negotiated deals, which one should take advantage of. What is our guidance on the future trend on real estate? This is what we believe. And I think most importantly, especially RERA was one of the big landmark event which has happened in the industry, and thankfully to protect the consumer's right and consumer requirement. And RERA has made sure that corporate governance, and most importantly adherence to quality and adherence to delivery of the product, is of paramount importance now. So this has resulted into branded developers, all the big branded developers gaining market share in a very prolific way. 41% in 2015, went up to 53% market share in 2019. And we expect, led by their strict adherence on quality and time, and the corporate governance, and their own adherence to RERA guidelines, we believe that their market share will go up to 60-65% by 2021. Millennials, till now would have, taking a cue from what Sunil said, would have kind of, preferred renting, and they may have gone beyond renting to co-living and other such aspects. But now people would realize that, and this is not, and people like us who have been working for 20-30 years, we know that stock market phenomena is very, very cyclical, and it comes every 7 years, and the reason this time is COVID. The reason 7-8 years ago was oil crisis, and reason before this was Lehman Brothers crisis, and reason before that was currency crisis. But such kind of crisis will come on impromptu, and will get branded under some or the other name. So this time it is COVID, but every 7 years such crisis comes. But this time millennials would also realize that staying on rent has led them to nothing, because all their money which got invested in market has been wiped off completely, and it will take years for that to go back to the same level as 2019 or 2018. Most importantly, people will still continue to practice social distancing. This is going to be a big change in the way we live now. And we believe that millennials will take a lot of interest in purchasing physical asset rather than staying on rent. And this is also coming from a lot of discussions and dialogues that we have had with our consumers. Large homes may be in demand going forward, especially with this work from home catching up quite well. Some of us were quite anxious in the first week or so, but now I'm sure that we have completely adopted this seamlessly. And earlier, while friends from IT were quite used to this, but I think this current COVID period has also taught all of us that we can still be effective and we can still continue to work from home. This would mean two things. One, taking a home would become very, very important. So one really need a home, and the configuration of the home needs to be smarter now. And with such a thing going to become part of our life, we may see some kind of changes in the way apartments are configured. Some apartments may need to have basic fixtures like washing machine, dryer, dishwasher, to accommodate things that we have had, in the current period. As I was sharing, there will be dramatic shift in purchasing real estate to digital medium, and with a lot of standardization coming up in the industry, and industry moving towards big branded developer, where RERA protects all the requirement and need of the customer. We expect online sale is going to be one big change which may come after this period. So our expectation is that in the first quarter, 100% of the sale will happen through digital medium, and quarter two onward, 25% of the sale will happen through digital medium. Home loan rates are at its lowest currently, and this will give a lot of fillip to the salaried customer to purchase their own homes and take advantage of not only lower rates, but also advantage of tax benefits, and most importantly, create an asset class which will continue to grow physically, in the sense that you still have an asset which you may own, which you may hold, and you can see, let's say I own some asset in the stock market. That asset is wiped. I can't even see that asset, So it's important to create an asset which one can not only see physically, but which can also grow organically over a period of time. Quick slide on Bangalore. Sunil mentioned this correctly. Bangalore is one of the most important markets of real estate, largely owing to its youthful nature. It's a young city. It's quite young, and it is the IT capital of the country and an economic powerhouse. And Bangalore also is gateway to enter southern India. Bangalore is blessed with strong fundamentals, and not only IT, but important industries like IT-enabled services, manufacturing, pharma. And Bangalore is home ground to many such things. It also is a startup capital of the country, and many startups are present in Bangalore. And the workforce is very young, and young city which attracts a lot of migrants from all over the place, and that's why it becomes all the more important to from real estate perspective. The city has exhibited great tenacity, and even during the sharp and displayed sharp sales growth in year 2017, 18 as well. Even after disruptive events like demonetization, RERA, and GST, we expect similar bounce back post COVID-19 period also, because we are talking of the real requirement. As we say that we don't expect prices to come down, and prices will not come down. If it had to come down, it would have already come down. If let's say, we can't say that because we are consuming less, so Ashirwad Atta will become will now be sold at 30% discount, or sugar will be sold at 50% discount. If these things will not get sold, so one should not have such fallacious imaginative thought that prices will fall. One has to take advantage of such crisis to get the best prices and a good negotiated deal. Now, 5 micro markets we believe is going to lead the momentum in Bangalore: Sarjapur, Bagalur, Whitefield, Electronic City, and Thanisandra. These are the 5 critical micro markets which had been leading the real estate journey of Bangalore. And we believe that this is going to be the leader going forward also. I will now hand over to Sunil.
Great. Thanks, Amit. So as promised, guys, I'll quickly close this now with a quick look on the prices, which Amit has mentioned to some extent. I'll just sort of give you a couple of more angles to look at that. And then after that, I'll end up with an interesting slide on GDP growth and economy. So just hold on to that. So prices of homes actually have increased by about 2 to 3% every year for the last 5 years, while inflation has been 5.5 to 6 years. So if we subtract 2 minus 6, which is minus 4, and multiply by 5 years, actually prices have fallen by 20% in the last 5 years. If you sort of compare with any other goods or your income itself, which has been increasing over the last 5 years. So that's one fact to keep in mind, that prices have fallen by 20%. So if anyone asks, will prices fall? I say, hey, prices have fallen already. The second point was what Amit had mentioned, that the branded developers are increasing more and more market share. They're aggregating more and more market share. The branded developers don't have too much loans on their books to worry about paying interest and paying off the repayment of those loans. So they are in no hurry to drop prices. And they're the ones who are sort of selling the most of the properties in the large cities today. So that's the second reason. And the third reason is that the profit and loss for the developers has shrunk. Profit and loss statement has shrunk a lot, because with inflation, prices of steel and cement have been increasing, while prices have just sort of increased marginally at 2%. So the profit margins have reduced to about 9 to 15% for a listed real estate developer. So there's hardly any wiggle room to drop prices for these guys. Hence, we do not expect any drastic fall in prices. These customers who want to buy homes should take advantage of the payment plans, schemes, and sort of face-to-face negotiation that developers are doing to some extent in the time of COVID-19 and beyond as well. You may get the best price in the time of crisis, but do not wait for a 5%, 10%, 15% prices to fall across the board and then you'll enter the market. There's not a market which you're entering if you want to buy your home, right? Stock markets is the market which you enter and you exit and you're caught in the middle. But real estate home buying is not a market. So just look for a good developer, a good locality, a good home, and then negotiate well, get some schemes out and close it is what our overall overarching recommendation is. The last section, which I promised you a bit of an interesting lesson in history, because this graph, if you see on the x-axis, it goes right up to 1960. 1960 to 2020 is 60 years graph. And this shows 6 instances where the GDP growth rate fell a lot or even went negative. And these are the 6 instances in the history of India. I'll tell you the years and you will remember the historical event which had happened. The first one is 1965. The second one is 1971-72. The third one is 1979, which has got the maximum sort of dip. And then it's 1991, 2000, 1999, 2000, and 2008. So these are 6 events which happened in the history of India. And hey, these are 6 events answered here on this slide. The first one was Pakistan war, when GDP growth rate fell by minus 2.64%. And as compared to the year before that, it fell by 10%. Similarly, 1972, when there was an oil crisis and Bangladesh war had just happened, GDP growth rate was minus 0.55%. Post-emergency 1979, guys, hold on to your seats, minus 5.24%. The economic crisis, when Manmohan Singh and Narasimha Rao sort of started the liberalization, privatization, globalization, the GDP growth rate was 1% at that time. Tech and telecom bust 2001, 3.8%, but having fallen by 5%. And the global financial crisis, 3%, followed by 4.6%. So when Ms. Geeta Gopinath of IMF predicts a 1.8, 1.9% growth rate for India, it's not that we have not seen this before in life. We have seen this 6 times and possibly much, much worse sort of falls. And as compared to those times, we are much better off. We have a much stronger economic fabric. We have a superb forex balance. The percentage of, there is just 220 million people in poverty right now, which divided by 130, which divided by 130 billion is almost just 16%. in just after independence, almost 60 to 70% of people in India are poor. So we are much better sort of in a position right now to withstand these sort of economic shocks. Of course, jobs would be in danger in spurts and pockets, especially in industries which have gone through a turbulent time. There would be sort of some impact here and there on personal circumstances, but as a large sort of whole India, I think we'll be able to withstand this shock. Is what we wanted to sort of communicate from this slide. See, the decision to buy a home is a 10 to 20-year decision, and hence the wisdom that we want to share is that don't let 10 to 20 to 45 days of events impact that longer term decision of 10 to 20 years. Because as we keep on saying, home is where the heart is, as some philosopher Pliny Jr. Told us about 2000 years back in 100 AD. And finally, it takes hands to build a house, but only hearts can build a home. And that's what this discussion is all about, buying a home right now. Thank you, guys. Great. This is a brilliant slide, just put 5 minutes before we started off. And these are all of you. And thank you very much for attending this. You are one of our sort of thousands of customers and prospective customers that we keep on talking to. Thank you for taking on the time and attending this. And I'll hand it over back to Varun.
Thank you, Sunil and Amit, for taking us through the detailed presentation on the trends we see in real estate in the current times. We will start off with the question and answer session. So we've received a lot of questions. We will go one by one and try and answer as many as we can. So the first question is, by observing the COVID situation, I feel it is better to invest in a ready-to-move-in property rather than an under-construction one to avoid surprises. Please give your comments on the same.
Sunil, with your permission, I shall like to answer this question. Varun, thanks, Sunil. Varun, I think that there isn't a correct answer to this. So I think one really has to understand that what is the phase in which I am to take or to purchase a property. The answer really depends on the current individual financial situation. So an RTMI or ready to move in product would mean one has to take load of the complete EMI of the product value. So let's say if the product is 50 lakhs, so one has to 50,000 as an EMI. If the product is under construction or at the launch stage, you pay only on the basis of the demand which is raised from the developer, and that's so and so forth. So one really has to understand the current financial situation in which one is to take such decision. What is very important is that in whatever financial situation you are in, we would seriously advise you to consider only branded good developers, because that's where your money would lie secure. And these are the people who under such crisis will have the capital at their disposal to make sure that the property is constructed and delivered on the timelines which is mentioned as per RERA. So while RERA is of course there to take care of the need of the consumer, it is important to make sure that our consumers prefer only branded big developers who will also have the capital requirement to make sure that such things are delivered on time. As part of a recent survey which we did in Bangalore last week, our consumers in Bangalore prefer to purchase under construction homes. And obviously with branded developers, they are assured of quality and timely delivery, and they also have the comfort of RERA. So the short answer is that one really has to look at the current financial situation in one is right at this point in time and take up basis this.
Thanks, Amit. The second question, actually, what I have done is there are 5 questions from different participants on the same topic, which is of prices. So I will just read out the 5 questions, and I will request you to, since the topic is similar, if you could look at answering all of them together. The first one is, what will be the impact of COVID-19 on real estate prices? then is real estate business going down? Is the property value going to decrease in the future? Will we be getting discount on flats? Then it is, would price of new apartments come down? The fourth one is, what would be the scenario in the coming time for home buying rates? Is it going to come down or rise higher? Investing in properties highly at risk now amidst salary cuts. If the rates are going to come down, only then it will be beneficial for all. What is the actual scene? And the last fifth one is, would the price of flats where customers are looking to buy goes down a bit because of the lockdown situation? Yeah, that was the set of 5 questions.
So can I take this, Amit?
Please.
Cool. Great. So I think multiple people are asking the same question, and that's why I think we had put that slide on prices proactively. Just recapping the answer which I had mentioned on that slide, that it doesn't look like there's going to be an across the board significant price fall. And for multiple reasons that we spoke about, the developers' profit and loss statement is already stretched. The bigger developers have gained much more market share, and they have deeper pockets and holding sort of power. Third, prices have fallen for this product by about 20% over the last 4 or 5 years. So, and especially in the lesser than 75 lakh rupees segment, there are not too many margins for developers to really sort of shrink prices and still make profits. There will be fire sale. There will be developers who want to just sort of sell their last inventory and move out of real estate itself. There will be so if those projects are ready to move in and you are getting a good deal, you should take that. But if it is under construction, then be very careful. As Amit mentioned, that it would be smart to put your decision and lot behind bigger branded developers who would exist 1 year, 5 years, and 20 years down the line, versus a smaller sort of a single building developer whose building is still under construction, whatever deal he gives you. So I'm pretty confident. We are almost putting our necks out and predicting this, that there isn't going to be a radical sort of drop in prices for you to wait. If you need a home, if your child is going to go to school from June and you want to move close to that school, if you need a bigger home because you were locked into a small 1 BHK apartment during COVID times, then it's a need-based decision, guys. You need to go for the purchase. Try to negotiate, get a smart deal on either parking or payment plan, etc. But do not postpone your decision for something, for a trend which is really not going to happen.
Thanks, Sunil. The next question is, how long do you feel it will approximately take for the markets to normalize? And what is the future of real estate foreseen across the next 3 to 5 years?
Wow, I'll continue, Amit, with that as well. Yeah, so this is a bit of a crystal gazing question on 3 to 5 years as well that has been asked, and what's going to happen immediately. So first of all, from the overall perspective, as you may have guessed with the content on our slides, we are not too much of subscribers to the whole prophet of doom theory and the world is going to come to an end. If people are comparing it to the Spanish flu of 1918, which lasted from January 1918 to December 1920, which is 3 years, I don't see much comparisons. The world is a different world in 100 years. The number of poor people are 0.5 billion upon 7 billion. At that time, 70 to 80% of the world was poor. The type of lockdown and social distancing we have done and will keep on doing over the next 1 to 3 months is completely different from what was done at that time. So I'm not too much worried about sort of us going that way. However, we have to take care of our health and lives. That comes first. But after a quarter or two, things are going to come back to normal. Q1 and Q2, of course, are going to take an economy, GDP growth rate hit as well. And there will be a serious slowdown in April to June. But as the economy sort of comes back, real estate is an industry which is part of the economy. That's also going to come back. we expect, I showed you the number of 2.5 lakh homes sold or each year for the last 4 years. We expect that number to come down in 2020 to about 1.7 to 1.9 lakh homes, which will be the lowest number in the last 10 to 12 years. However, people need homes. That's why it's not going to go below that. And by 2021, we expect that number to come back to about a 2.6 lakh or a bigger number than that, as the pent-up demands sort of starts fructifying in that year. So the larger parts about RERA, demonetization, GST, which had happened in 2016-17, and those benefits we had started accruing till COVID hit, are going to come back again. And real estate is going to see a secular increase in 2022 to 2025. There's not going to be a 50% per year increase in prices for anyone, guys. That was a one-off 2003 to 2000 phase, but it's going to be secular sort of price hike and of capital appreciation of 10 to 15% per annum, which will bring it to par with equity investments. So that's our sort of outlook for the future.
Thanks, Sunil. The next question is, how can we make investment in this lockdown when we can't visit and see the property physically?
I'll take that question, Sunil. Varun, I also shared during my presentation, and I'll share a few more examples on this. So just imagine when Jeff Bezos was building his online bookstore in 1997, there was a big company called Barnes and Noble, which was a replica of Oxford or Crossford of India, which used to sell books physically. Everybody, Jeff Bezos is a crackpot, and he will never be able to, do anything on that sense. 20 that time, Amazon is a reality, and Barnes and Noble is shut now. Nobody buys books from Barnes and Noble. Everybody buys from Amazon. Go to America, why not look at Koramangala, where Sachin, when they were building Flipkart, and everybody thought that in India, especially and just imagine 7-8 years ago, 10 years ago, when people were still scared of giving credit cards number online, delivery was still, and personally, all of us would have gone through this experience. So the point is that when such events were unfolding and happening, we were part of that movement. So while we heard that people were buying clothes online 10 years ago, we couldn't have imagined. And so I think the reality is that online e-commerce is a reality, and all of us are buying everything from a pin to a motorbike online, and without homes are, of course, the larger investment that a middle class Indian will be doing, and need much more research than other products. However, with 75% of the properties being sold in the newly launched or just get constructed, there isn't much what our consumer can see physically at these sites. Because there isn't anything available. Largely, many of such project plan or such things are available in the brochure and in the videos which goes through in the AV room of developer. So just imagine if such high quality virtual simulation can be created, such content can be created, which can be shared with our consumers online, then it does not need to go to any site to purchase anything. A drone video of a locality, a 3D, the 3D floor plan, and finally the apartment walkthrough would give collectively would give a better idea to a consumer to make an informed. So I think this is going to be a new normal, and we really need to learn to live with this. And more especially in the large context of launch or just newly under construction product, this can be a potent tool through which our consumers can purchase. It is also important to understand that only under such crisis one can imagine to get the best prices or best negotiated deal, and really negotiate for a good payment plan or negotiate some waivers here and there. And I'm sure that this is the time to buy things with advantage on behind you. After a couple of months, when all these things, when normalcy will get restored, just imagine during demonetization, when the entire world said that real estate will collapse, nothing of that sort happened. And consumers who had taken advantage of those 2-3 months got the best deals, because just after December 2016, January of 2017 onward, normalcy got restored and prices started increasing, So one has to take advantage of such situation, and go for the kill.
Thanks, Amit. The next question is says that I'm a first time buyer. I'm reaching the age of 30, just married. I'm confused if I should buy a house only to live for myself, or is it a good investment as compared to other investment options like share market, gold, etc. Also, as it is my investment, I would want it to be a successful one. How do you foresee real estate returns in future span of 10 to 15 years in Bangalore? I am from Maharashtra, so I'm confused between buying a house in Bangalore versus Pune.
Okay. I think first of all, I'd like to extend my congratulations and best wishes, on marriage. Most importantly, one may be tempted to invest in stock market, but guys, we must understand that none of us are Rakesh Jhunjhunwala, and who would make the killing. Most of the time, retail investors, by the time they get into any, any kind of wave or trading journey, we end up losing everything, and many of us on the call also will reflect back that it's very difficult to make money in the stock market, and especially when you are looking at a horizon of 7 to 8 years. Then incidents like COVID or GFC will make sure that whatever you have earned, notional money you have earned, and you will feel happy at your portfolio every month, will get wiped off. So there isn't too much of point looking at the stock market, especially during such times. Gold obviously may be tempted, one may be tempted, but people commit the mistake of purchasing jewelry and looking at the making charge and other things. That investment is also a foolish investment. So and there's isn't they you may not have enough space in your home to hold gold bars or gold biscuits. So and that also is not a very prudent or pragmatic investment. I think, especially for someone who has just entered an institution like marriage, it is an ideal time when one should start looking for a house. And since this is going to be the first house, I would suggest that one should look at this from the perspective of self-use, and hence the buying in Bangalore will be more suitable to you. I have gone through this cycle in my life, and the first home that I purchased, I purchased in Calcutta, thinking my parents will stay and I will use this as a retirement home. And after that purchase, I finally had to dispose that home after 10 years because nothing of that sort happened. So one has to remove the emotions attached to this and add pragmatism to such important investments. So my suggestion: first home should be bought only for the end use and for your own consumption. In case if you're looking in near future to go back to Pune, in that case, one may prefer to buy, home in Pune. So in case if you are looking at getting transferred to Pune, then you can also look at purchasing home in Pune. It's also a good vibrant market. But the moot point is that you should purchase only for end use, for your own consumption. Real estate prices grow steadily, and grow steadily and they grow very, very organically, and it will also give you a physical asset that you may live in. The prices are not volatile, as I shared, unlike equity and other asset class. So you can have a very stable investment as well uh, as something for your own consumption. Over 10 to 15 years, obviously you will get reasonable returns from such investments.
Thanks, Amit. While we have just overshot our time, but I will just take one last question. This is specifically for Sunil. Post-COVID, which segment, as per you, will perform better? Luxury or affordable? Under construction or ready to move in? What would be your take on the impact of pricing of smaller builders?
Great. Yeah, so three questions there, I think so. Luxury versus affordable, under construction versus ready to move in, and impact on small builders. The first two questions would be combined in my mind, but I'll sort of try to break that into two parts. So in terms of percentage of homes sold, number of homes sold, affordable will continue to keep on being a bigger sort of segment because there are these 50 lakh migrants coming into the top 8 to 9 cities every year, Bangalore being one of them. And remember, we are selling 2.5 lakh homes every year. So the influx of migrants is huge, is humongous. And most of them will start off with a 1 BHK home in Mumbai, Pune, and possibly a 2 BHK home in Bangalore and Gurgaon. But that would be entry level, and that would continue to remain the biggest selling segment. However, a 3 BHK uptick may come because of the COVID stay-at-home thing, when people would have had a bit of a lack of space in a 1 BHK or 2 BHK, if it is a 4 to 5 member family staying there. So there would be an interesting sort of a trend coming up, and that may fall short of luxury, but that would be another sort of segment, a 2.5 to 3 BHK home, which may see a small spurt. And with those will be the upgrade customers, obviously. Those won't be the first time buyers who are coming in. So both segments will have some traction. Affordable will continue because of the fundamental reasons, and there will be a small sort of a small to medium size uptick in a 2.5 to 3 to 3.5 BHK homes, as people want more and more elbow room there. So that's in the first one. The second one, under construction to RTMI, Amit had explained about the KYC, which is the know your customer requirement. So one can never answer a question flatly that, hey, you should buy an RTMI under construction. And it will depend on the individual circumstances of people. While in most surveys, people say that 50 to 60% people say they want to buy a ready to move in home. Actual data shows that only about 25% of homes sold today are ready to move in. 75% are still under construction homes being sold in real life. So that trend is going to continue. In the immediate future, in the next 1 to 2 months, some ready to move in homes will sell quicker because people would want to stay in their own homes after having gone through the COVID 1 or 2 months of lockdown. But post that, again, I think it will be fair mix of under construction and RTMI, possibly in the continuing ratio of 70-30 or 75-25 is what I would take a sort of punt on. The last question is interesting on how will small builders react? Will they reduce prices, etc.? It depends from builder to builder and how stretched his or her finances are. If I were a small builder, I would see the bigger builders around me not dropping prices. And I would actually take advantage of that by trying to sort of be in that segment and then try to sell my apartment at the right price. It's not even a high price because the prices have already fallen by 20%. But this depends on the financial circumstances of every small builder. If he has taken a loan at a 22% per annum from the Kacha market and he has to repay that, then obviously he has to cut losses and forget about sunk cost. He has to do deals across the table and sort of move on. But that would be, I think, 10 to 20% of the small builders as well. The majority would look at the larger builders for comfort of prices and try to hold on and try to make money try to make the rightful profits in the next 6 to 12 months. Is how I would look at shape of things. Thanks, Sunil.
Thanks, Sunil. Thanks, Amit, for answering the questions. We have come to the end of this webinar. There are a lot of questions which are still to be answered. We will be getting in touch with you one-on-one and responding to your respective questions as we are not able to do this here right now because of paucity of time. Just before we sign off, just wanted to thank each one of you for taking time out on a Saturday morning to join this webinar. I'm sure you've found this webinar useful. In case there are any further questions, please feel free to get in touch with you and we'll be happy to answer those. Thank you once again for joining. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.